No live organisms can continue to exist sanely under conditions of absolute reality. Even larks and katydids are supposed by some to dream. Hillhouse, not sane, stood by itself against its hills, holding darkness within. It had stood so for 100 years before my family moved in, and might stand 100 more. Within, walls stood upright, bricks met neatly, floors were firm. Silence lay steadily against the wood and stone of Hillhouse, and whatever walked there, walked alone. Steve is set up in many ways to be the main protagonist of the show, or at the very least, the audience surrogate. Initially, we view the events of Hillhouse through his eyes. The show even starts off with Steve's narration. Even the first episode is named Steve Sees a Ghost. He's the only character who has his name in an episode title. We first see an adult Steve during an interview he is conducting with Irene Walker, a widow who had lost her husband in a tragic car accident. Her haunting story of seeing her dead husband interests Steve, as he is now a famous horror novelist. While he is known for his work in horror, he insists that the supernatural is merely preternatural. He believes that it is a natural phenomenon that we simply don't understand yet. He compares it to primitive humans that died of fright during an eclipse because they didn't understand what was happening. This sets up his character as the skeptic and the logical, objective observer. Steve sets up a very convincing explanation about Irene's sighting of her husband Carl. He speculates that Irene's grief, combined with the leak in the roof of her house, and the removal of the stop sign at a nearby intersection, may have all caused a hallucination. We, as the audience, are asked to start off skeptical and questioning about what happened that fateful night when Olivia Crain died. As a child, Steve can be seen as the stereotypical older brother, comforting his younger siblings, trying to help out his dad with the home renovations, and trying to cheer up his mother when she started to feel down. Overall, Steve was the older, responsible child, and his parents relied on him to take care of his younger siblings. As we jump forwards and backwards through the show's main two timelines, we can see that Steve, the adult, is skeptical, pessimistic, and defeated. The events of Hillhouse have broken and damaged the Crains, and the ghosts of Hillhouse continue to haunt the family even after their initial escape. The show spends a lot of time focusing on Steve and Hues' complicated relationship. As a child, Steve craved his father's approval and is constantly emulating him. It is made quite clear that Steve's main role model is his dad, Hugh. Steve is especially hurt when his father dismisses him after the fan incident in the basement. The relationship seems to only go downhill from there. Mistrust and suspicion formed that night when Olivia Crain died. And of course, the complete fallout of the media storm that followed didn't help their relationship either. Hugh's reluctance and refusal to give his children information permanently walls out Steve and his siblings from his father. Yet Steve is still seen trying to act like Hugh in many ways. He assumes the fatherly role of the family, with Shirley acting more in a motherly role. He is seen trying to financially support his siblings and tries to keep them together. This is especially seen when he and Shirley arranges accommodations for Luke at a very expensive rehab center. I especially like the detail of Steve still using his father's clean version of a swear, opting to use "Father Mucker" instead of the usual foul language. Ironically, he falls into the same pitfalls like his father. He's blinded by his logic, and moments of clarity are then waved away as delusions or fantasy. The scene where Hugh talks about the witness marks is especially illuminating. Like the witness marks on an old clock, the evidence of the supernatural and ghosts has always been present. Steve often states that he did not see ghosts during his time at Hill House as a child. Yet Steve sees the man working on the clock, who is later revealed to be a ghost. Steve also spends time in Luke's treehouse and his own game room, which is ultimately revealed to be the Red Room in disguise. When he finds the old vanity table in his game room, he decides to clean it and paint it for his mother. When she reacts violently after seeing a vision in the mirror, Steve becomes disturbed by his mother's behavior. He witnesses his mother's rapid decline and blames it solely on her mental illness, even though she's shown to be quite a level-headed and scientific woman, albeit a little whimsical and bohemian. Steve also sees the dogs along with his other siblings during the night of the storm, and on the same night, he was also present for Nell's disappearance and mysterious reappearance. All these weird events and sightings, yet as an adult, he tells Irene he has never seen a ghost during his time at Hill House. Steve's glasses seem to be a clear symbolic object of his character. Glasses are usually associated with sight, authors, thinkers, and clarity. Yet Steve is rarely seen wearing his glasses. He's often holding them, playing with them, and resting them on his shirt collar. He's often seen taking them off, almost like he's uncomfortable wearing his glasses. Steve seems to have the tools for clear sight, but is not capable of using it for clarity. He was a witness to the events of Hill House, yet he has no idea what actually happened that night. Out of all the Crain children, Steve is most antagonistic towards his father due to their unresolved issues. He idolized Hugh as a child, but was disillusioned following the events of Olivia's death. He places most of the blame on his father's inability to fix things. Steve believes his father is weak, and combined with the belief that his mother was insane, Steve believes that his genes are corrupted. This prompts him to get a vasectomy right out of college. He resents his father for withholding information about what happened to Olivia and the night she died. Yet Steve also keeps secrets about his vasectomy from everyone. And most ironically of all, he blames his father for letting Hill House destroy their family. Yet he writes about Hill House for the advancement of his own career and uses his family as an excuse. He says, "I need to start a real life for my own family," which causes another huge rift between him and his siblings. What is most egregious about this is that he says he is doing it for his family, knowing full well he has no intentions of starting his own family. So ultimately, writing about Hill House was for his own personal gain. Steve gets into an argument with Shirley about writing the book, and says something incredibly insensitive to his very pregnant sister. Mom was mentally ill, it's a fact. I'll be damned if the apple didn't fall too far from. His fear of passing on his defective genes leads him to self-destructive behavior, which causes his marriage to fall apart. Like his father, Steve allows Hillhouse to destroy his family. Steve feels the most guilt about lying to his wife Lee. He doesn't tell her that he has gotten a vasectomy right out of college. The vasectomy was done even before he met her. He knew she always wanted kids, yet he continues to lie to her about his vasectomy. He completely takes away her agency, deciding that his decision is best for both of them, when in reality, it is a decision based purely on fear. She desperately tries to get pregnant, yet he remains silent for a long period of time because he was so afraid to lose her. Of course, when she finally finds out, she separates from him and kicks him out of their house. Throughout the flashbacks, you can see Lee standing up for Steve, especially during heated family arguments. She considers the Crains her family and is incredibly supportive of Steve. Yet he blatantly lies to her and betrays her trust. Understandably, she's furious with him and refuses any attempt at reconciliation. Even after their estrangement, she still flies out to support the Crains during Nell's funeral. When Steve and his siblings are incapacitated and taken to the Red Room, he has a vision of Lee, pregnant and happy. They seemingly reconciled and are living a happy life together. This is, of course, a vision given to him by the house, in an attempt to manipulate him, similar to what it did to Olivia. The visions is very telling because it preys on each of the Crains' deepest regret and desires. Steve sees himself back with his wife Lee, who is now very pregnant and happy. However, when he starts to question the vision because he cannot seem to remember how he got to this happy place in his life, Lee's apparition seemingly becomes annoyed and frustrated. This alternate Lee then continues to berate him as an author, calling him a hack. She continues to berate him for using her as a prop. She then shifts tactics and decides to drive him insane with terrible visions of his worst fear, a festering, horrible abomination eating his wife from the inside. She says,
"She must be an eater, like her dad. If she is my love, if she eats me from the inside, and I burst like a blister, would you lose your mind? Like your mother?"
In a poetic twist, Steve ultimately gets his childhood wish of being like his father. As the show comes to an end, Steve carries on his father's burden of becoming a guardian of Hillhouse. Similar to the way that Hugh does not tell his children what happened to Olivia that night, Steve doesn't tell his siblings he saw his dead father's body in the stairway. Instead, he makes sure they have safely left Hillhouse before returning to confront the truth about the house on his own. In a final act of catharsis, Hugh bids his son an emotional farewell before disappearing behind the red door. Hugh is left to care for the deceased Crains, and Steve is left to care for the living ones. Finally, Steve is able to understand the truth of Hillhouse and finds new resolve to fix and mend his broken relationships. Steve then returns home to ask for Lee's forgiveness and to reveal his true self to her. bare of any secrets, guise, guilt, and ghosts. Only when he is completely honest with her does she take him back. Once he is able to accept that the ghosts of Hill House are real, he is able to move on with his life and heal old wounds. The Crains are seen living a happier life together as they continue to grow and live. Fear. Fear is the relinquishment of logic, the willing relinquishing of reasonable patterns. But so, it seems, is love. Love is the relinquishment of logic, the willing relinquishment of reasonable patterns. We yield to it, or we fight it, but we cannot meet it halfway. Without it, we cannot continue for long to exist sanely under conditions of absolute reality. Hill House, not sane, stands against its hills, holding darkness within. It has stood so for 100 years and might stand 100 more. Within, walls continue upright, bricks meet neatly, floors are firm, and doors are sensibly shut. Silence lay steadily against wood and stone of Hill House, and those who walk there walk together.